Greetings, everyone. It is wonderful to join you at your 2023 Gala. I thank President Fatima Goss-Graves for your leadership of this powerful organization and for your partnership on so many of the critical issues facing us today. I also thank my many friends on the NWLC Board of Directors, including, of course, my niece. And thank you to all the leaders gathered today. For over half a century, the National Women's Law Center has advanced gender justice and gender equity across our society, in the courts, in the halls of Congress, and in communities across our nation. You have fought for equal pay and equal protections, advocated for survivors of sexual assault, and worked to protect and expand LGBTQ+ rights and reproductive freedom. Like so many of you, I have spent my entire career fighting for the health, safety, and well-being of women and families. As a courtroom prosecutor, I specialized in crimes of violence against women and children. As Attorney General of California, I created the Bureau of Children's Justice in the California Department of Justice. And as a United States Senator, I helped lead the fight to lower the cost of child care, advance pay equity, and protect reproductive freedom. As your Vice President, I am proud to continue to work with you as we fight on behalf of women and families. For example, together, we passed the Pregnant Workers Fairness Act, which requires that employers give pregnant mothers reasonable accommodations, like more flexible hours, regular breaks, and appropriately sized uniforms. And we passed the PUMP Act to make sure nursing mothers have the protections and accommodations they need. We also made maternal health a national priority. Together, we expanded postpartum care through Medicaid from 2 months to 12 months, from 3 states to most recently 38 states across our nation, which means, of course, at least 500,000 more women in America now have access to a full year of vaccinations, pelvic exams, and postpartum depression care. And because we believe our courts should reflect the people of our nation, we have confirmed more women to the federal bench than any other administration in its first 3 years. In sum, President Biden and I are proud of the work we have done so far, and we have more to do. Together, let us all continue to fight to make sure every family has access to affordable, high-quality childcare. Let us continue to fight to close the wage gap, and let us continue to fight for freedom and liberty, including reproductive freedom and the right of every woman to make decisions about her own body. And let us fight to get the protections of Roe written into law. In closing, NWLC, thank you for your courage, conviction, and your belief in the founding principles of our nation: freedom, equity, and justice for all. And remember, when we fight, we win. Take care.
At the National Women's Law Center, our work reflects not just what we care about, but who we are. We are survivors. We are people who have had abortions, people who use birth control.
This is not a question. Abortion is healthcare.
We fight for reproductive freedom and for the right to live, learn, and work free from harassment and violence.
It is my deep honor to announce here tonight the launch of the Abortion Access Legal Defense Fund.
We fight against extremist efforts to dismantle the rights of those most vulnerable to oppression.
We have been working around a bill that would align Title IX's protections.
Because we belong to these communities. We are immigrants and women of color in a world where our communities work hard every day without equal pay.
It's beyond time our lawmakers take action to pass the Paycheck Fairness Act.
We are trans people and people with disabilities whose very existence is threatened by the law. We are queer people who deserve to live with joy, freedom, and dignity.
Queer people deserve equitable access to reproductive health care. We're suing one of the largest health insurance companies in the country over it.
We champion gender justice across the multitude of issues that impact the lives of women and girls.
This is really the moment to make a change in our policies and have the priority be investing in children, in families, and in workers.
We do not live single-issue lives as one or as a whole. We span generations and gender identities, race and religion. At the National Women's Law Center, our work is deeply personal. We're fighting for ourselves, and we're fighting for you. We're fighting for justice for all.
Please welcome the co-chairs for this event, Deborah Slaner-Larkin, Title IX advocate and former CEO of the Women's Sports Foundation, and Tanya Robinson, Vice Chair and General Counsel at KPMG LLP.
Well, good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us to celebrate the National Women's Law Center. I am Tanya Robinson, Chair of the Law Center's Board and one of this year's Gala co-chairs.
And I'm Deborah Slaner-Larkin, longtime board member and also co-chair of the Gala. We're excited to welcome you this evening of joy, defiance, and hope.
Tonight you'll hear from artists and activists, actors and attorneys, who are all working to move our movement and our country forward. But first, a few words on how we got here.
Well, for me, maybe just 2 words, Title IX. Yeah, you know. As CEO of the Women's Sports Foundation, working with Billie Jean King and other champion athletes, I led many battles of the sexes and battles that came after. Advocating for women's leadership and equality for all has been my life's work. I've had the privilege to fight alongside the National Women's Law Center, who for more than 50 years has made sure that women and people across the country know about their rights on the court and in the classroom. Title IX. And when politicians start campaigns to weaken or change the law, or when schools continue to ignore it, the center is always there to stand up for what's right. It's an ongoing battle that's taking more than 3 sets to win. But we're good at going the distance. 30 years ago with the center, I started the Margaret Fund, named for my daughter, to put more resources behind the fight for women's rights. It has been such a gift to me to support this organization that really makes a difference, whether it's supporting young athletes in a local school district or defending champions like Lilly Ledbetter throughout her fight for equal pay. I was honored to join the center at the White House when President Obama signed the bill bearing her name. I'll never forget how I felt, how we all felt, looking around that room, goosebumps, tears. It was an incredible day.
So Deborah, I wasn't in the room for the signing of the historic Lilly Ledbetter Act, but I was there for what happened next. Not long after, I joined the Obama administration as Special Assistant to the President for Justice and Regulatory Policy in the White House, and along with a gaggle of women across that body, convened the President's National Equal Pay Task Force, bringing agencies and industries together to make sure the promise of the Lilly Ledbetter Act became a reality. As I've shared with this audience before, that was the first time that I meaningfully encountered the National Women's Law Center, when the sharpest, most formidable group of advocates pulled up to the table to weigh in on our work and hold us accountable in making progress. Let me just say, we all sat up and paid attention when Fatima Goss-Graves joined the conversation. I've spent my career working in government, law and business, I've had the big opportunity to work in the halls of Congress and the bowels of the White House, tackling a mixed public policy portfolio of issues that were interesting, fair housing to drug policy to criminal justice reform. So when the team from the center came in talking about equal pay and talking about it as a matter of gender justice and racial justice and economic justice, I knew I had found my tribe. They cared as I did about the connections between pay equity and affordable childcare, between access to health care and protections for pregnant workers, and so much more. That is why I support the National Women's Law Center.
And that is why I support the National Women's Law Center.
Because they were right there with us, fighting for equal pay.
For Title IX protections.
For LGBTQ people.
For every issue affecting girls' and women's lives.
For justice for her, for justice for all.
You know, this fight didn't start with us.
It started with my grandmother and mother, Moselle Robinson, to whom I clung in neighborhood and precinct meetings, at the polls on election day. She taught me what activism and care for each other and for our communities. She taught me what that was all about.
And for me, it started with my mother, Luella, and my sister, Barbara Winslow, who have always been activists, followed by my hero and friend, Billie Jean King, who knew at age 8 that she would fight and be tireless in the fight for equality.
The fight doesn't end with us either.
It lives on with my daughter, Margaret, who is a force and a visionary. Yeah. Margaret, we'd love for you to join us on stage.
And the fight also lives in my daughter, Kira, who teaches and stretches me with every conversation around our kitchen table. I'd also like to invite Kira to join us up here on the stage. Because it is to Kira and to Margaret and to all of our daughters that Deborah and I are passing the baton.
Thank you, Mommy. Because this work isn't a sprint.
It's not even a marathon.
It's a relay.
And that's where we come in.
And that's where the National Women's Law Center comes in as well.
For over half a century, the Law Center has been bringing powerful, diverse coalitions together to take on each leg.
Building on the work of all those who came before and investing in the generations who will carry on long after.
Bringing together strategists and supporters from all different backgrounds.
Like my mother, like me.
Like my mother, and me, and all of you. To the board and the staff of the National Women's Law Center, and to our tireless supporters, thank you for being here, for joining us, for taking the baton.
To our mothers and the mothers of the movement, thank you for working towards a more just and equal future, for giving us that baton. And all
Now, we'd like to express our special thanks to the people who made this evening possible.
When we find ourselves at critical moments like this one, the National Women's Law Center would not be able to keep winning without the help and support of our sponsors. Tonight, we are incredibly grateful for everyone who has shown up and worked alongside us in deep and meaningful ways, especially our Leadership Circle sponsors, Covington and Burling, Hogan Levels, Jenner and Block LLP, JP Morgan Chase & Co., KPMG, Deborah Slainer Larkin, Hall, Weiss, Rifkin, Warden, and Garrison LLP. SEIU. Sidley Austin LLP. Uber. Wilmer Hale. Thank you for your partnership.
And now, please welcome the President and CEO of the National Women's Law Center, Fatima Goss Graves.
Good evening. Tonight, I would like to begin where most speeches would conclude, and that's with what success looks like for the Law Center, for gender justice, and really for our entire movement. Because here's the truth. We can't declare victory after one good headline. We cannot declare victory after one good decision. We can't declare victory after one good bill is passed. And to be clear, I kind of think it's a feminist miracle that we were able to make progress in these times, given the state of our current Congress and the 3 weeks that it took to decide on a speaker. But still, victory is made from moments. But it is also bigger than any one moment. Victory is a better future for all of us. At the Law Center, that future is our focus, and it drives everything we do. In a post-Dobbs nation, as we push back against the unjust punishment of patients and providers and really everyone who loves them and the attacks that we are seeing on medication abortion, we are also pressing forward towards a future in which people in this country have access to the full spectrum of reproductive health care that they need. Full stop. In a post-pandemic workforce, we are fighting for a future where every family can find and afford high-quality childcare. Because here's what you need to know. Care is infrastructure. It holds up our economy. It holds up women and families. And because, and I will say it louder again and again for the people in the back and maybe for those on Capitol Hill, care is not some personal problem that women in this country are either failing or winning at, and that they are underpaid and unacknowledged, and that's okay, that's the work they do. Care is a public good. And in our very fragile democracy, we will be in every region of this country fighting for gender justice. With our partners, the State Innovation Exchange, I am proud to announce that we have launched a state gender policy collective, which will harness and grow the combined power of state officials, policymakers, and community leaders across this country. The book bans, the efforts to erase our history, the attacks that we're seeing on trans and non-binary young people, on access to gender-affirming care, the full frontal attack on abortion, this is a coordinated strategy. But our response will be just as coordinated and even more determined. Because with every rollback of rights, every regressive piece of legislation, I know it can be tempting to define ourselves in opposition, to see this as a period of only resistance and retrenchment. But even as we defend the people and communities who are facing very real threats at this moment, we must never lose sight of where our movement is headed, toward a future that is bolder and brighter than anywhere we have been before, toward an economy that values our labor, a democracy that recognizes our power, and a country that honors our health and well-being and upholds true reproductive freedom. You see, this isn't a once-in-a-generation fight. This is a generational fight. And every time I look at my parents, and they are here tonight in the audience, and every time I look at my own two boys, and I'll admit they're not here tonight, that's fine. I am reminded this fight has been fought for generations and will be felt for generations. You see, history teaches us that in fights like ours, progress happens only when we dream beyond what we know to be possible. When heroes like Marian Wright Edelman and the National Women's Law Center founders, Marcia Greenberger and Duffy Campbell, when they were imagining new legal frameworks for gender and racial justice into existence, when trailblazers like Shirley Chisholm dared to run for president at a time when our country couldn't even imagine that possibility, and movement leaders like Dolores Huerta, who dared to say, no, workers do have worth, and together we are the very definition of power. When we look at what the world has offered up so far and say, look, we want more. We deserve more. We can do more. Like our grandmothers for our movement, we will dream far beyond the pain and the peril of these times. We will mount a full-blown resurgence, a rising force with the power to go beyond what is deemed politically reasonable or even possible today. And we are building momentum. With every survivor whose story holds powerful systems to account, as the former employees and survivors of the Washington Commanders did earlier this year, with every voter in Kansas who refused to let the state strip away their right to abortion, to their own lives, to their own future, with the first Black woman to sit on the Supreme Court and every Black woman lawyer whose work and legacy and hope have preceded hers and now will follow. A better future, the future our ancestors dared to imagine. It all hinges on all of us having, in the words of Shirley Chisholm, the vision of what is necessary and the courage to make it possible. In the face of attacks designed to defeat and dishearten, our courage demands joy. And in response to legislation and litigation intended to put us in our place, our courage demands defiance. And in order to push back now and press forward to a better tomorrow, our courage, it demands hope. The strength of our resurgence, it lies in our collective commitment to the Law Center, but also to our communities and to one another. So let me end where speeches typically begin, and that is with gratitude. Thank you to the National Women's Law Center staff. Thank you to our board. Thank you to our partners. Thank you to our supporters. Thank you to our donors. Thank you to all those who made tonight possible by serving, by setting up, and so much more. Thank you all for joining us this evening. And from here, let us build a better future. Let us win that future together.
Please welcome our moderator, Marie Nelson, president of Hot Docs and host of the Hot Docs Documentary Festival in Toronto, and our panelists, President and Director Counsel of the NAACP Legal Defense Fund, LDF, Janae Nelson, and President of the National Domestic Workers Alliance, Ai-jen Poo.
Thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you. I have to say, I want to thank Fatima for such a rousing start. When I saw Kira and Margaret getting up there, I got a little bit choked up. but in part because it reminded me of how long it's going to be before my 5-year-old twin daughters leave the nest. Right now, they're firmly ensconced in the nest. And I love them.
Yes.
Thank you. That's where we need to start tonight. And hello, everyone. It's fantastic to be with you, leading this exciting conversation with two of the country's preeminent social justice leaders, Ai-jen Poo and Janae Nelson, AKA Sister from Another Mister. I could spend all night talking to the two of you about a range of things, but I know that our time is short this evening, and so we're just going to get into it. And part of the conversation that we want to have tonight is around narrative and narrative change, how we tell our stories. That's my bread and butter, working for an organization that's figuring out the best way to tell the stories of our lives. And I think that we're at a place right now where we can all agree that we feel like we're in the midst of a storm. And it's a storm, in fact, that is advancing. And we're thinking about what the next year is going to bring. And so I actually wanted to borrow from you, Ai-jen, a way of setting an intention for this conversation. And I'm borrowing it from your podcast, Sunstorm, which is an incredible podcast that I really enjoy, that you co-host with Alicia Garza. And one of the things I loved is that your tagline is, "We are the light in the storm."
That's right.
And so that's the intention that I want to set for this conversation. How do we bring light by telling these stories in a compelling way into the storm that we are all in some ways ensconced in? So folks at NAASC often say that law and policy change have to be in constant conversation with efforts to change our culture. So Ai-jen, I will start with you. You've been leading that charge, specifically trying to center the work that's often invisible, the labor of care and domestic work in policy, in entertainment, and in conversations around kitchen tables. In fact, you've even got your first Care Fest next week in Los Angeles, which sounds exciting. So what shifts have you seen in how we talk about care work, and what still is not serving us?
Well, thank you so much for the question, and it's such an honor to be here tonight. When I think about what has changed about how we talk about care, how we think and feel about care, I just think about how most of us in this country, maybe not the people in this room, but most people in this country really saw care and care work as kind of an individual, personal responsibility to be shouldered mostly by the women in our families. And if, for whatever reason, we struggle to afford care, to manage care, we saw it as a personal failure, that we don't have the right job, or we didn't save enough, or we didn't buy the right long-term care insurance when we should have, that we somehow failed. And I think in the last few years, especially with the pandemic that brought the care crisis to everyone's doorsteps, we've started to see that care is essential. Care is what makes everything else in society possible. It's the work that makes all other work possible. And it's not about a personal responsibility alone. Yes, it is among the most important and sacred responsibilities we have, but we are doing the very best we can, and it's not enough because we were never meant to shoulder it alone. We need systems and policies and a workforce to support us. And I think the shift in awareness that really understands that and feels that has taken hold in the last few years. And Fatima talked about it from the stage. It is infrastructure. It is the thing that enables work, the economy, our lives to be possible. And more people in this country, in this culture, have really embraced that. I do think that when it comes to care work, we started to talk about care work as essential work in the pandemic, but it hasn't really been reflected in our policies and in our actions enough yet. And that is the work ahead, is to turn these shifts and these openings in the public consciousness, in our emotional lives, and turn it into lasting change in our culture and in our policies, so that we are valuing care work with family-sustaining jobs and benefits and union, the right to a union, that we are treating these jobs as the jobs of the future, that we can really take pride in, as opposed to the jobs that are quite often still seen as disposable and still treated as less than real work and often still referred to as help. So we still have a long way to go, but we have come so, so very far.
Janae, absolutely. Janae, I want to bring you into the conversation. You know, in some spaces, the NAACP Legal Defense Fund, your work is oftentimes summed up as, you know, just defending our democracy. But what about our democracy? How we're talking about it right now in this moment would you want to correct?
Oh, what a great question. And I have to say, it's just so wonderful to be in this room and to be here in support of the National Women's Law Center, who we work with so much. Okay, how would I want to talk about our democracy? One narrative that I'd want to shift is that it's sport, that this is nothing more than a game of politics and different parties that are pulling with a tug of war for our morality, for our future. I would want to reorient us to think about this not as sport, but as survival. I mean, it really is about the survival of our multiracial, multi-ethnic democracy. We are seeing assaults on our democracy at a scale that we have not seen since the Jim Crow era. And we know that the impact is not just limited to the targets of that voter suppression, who are namely voters of color and especially Black voters, but it reverberates and has a deep impact on who gets elected to Congress, who gets to pass laws and legislation, who ultimately gets nominated to sit on our federal courts, and who gets to decide how we live our lives. And those are such consequential decisions, and they are being compromised by discrimination in our democracy. So I would love to shift the narrative from just looking at politics and seeing who can be more, I don't know, attention-getting, get more clicks, and more offensive, and use language that is more shocking to the conscious than the next person, and that we actually recognize that what is at stake is the survival of this country. And at this moment, our democracy is so necessary, not just domestically, but also on the global stage, to have our country serve as a model for how different people can live together and overcome divisions is so essential, more now than ever, especially as we think about the crisis that we're witnessing today.
You're talking about survival, and you both have touch points in various communities that are fighting, that you're fighting on their behalf, and so many of them feel unheard. And in particular, obviously we're here talking about the fight for women and for justice, communities of color, queer folks, and oftentimes it appears as though there's a gap. There's a gap between what they need and what they feel like their leadership is really delivering. And how do you think about us moving to close that gap?
Well, domestic workers, 82% of domestic workers still don't have a single paid sick day. Domestic workers are still excluded from some of the most basic rights that many of us take for granted: health and safety protections, paid time off, health care. And so we have a long way to go to make these jobs good family-sustaining jobs. And I think what's really wonderful about being here tonight is that in partnership with organizations like the National Women's Law Center and all of our coalition partners in Care Can't Wait, our CARE Coalition, SEIU, and the National Partnership for Women and Families, and Paid Leave for All. There's so many groups we're all in this room celebrating this incredible organization. Domestic workers have been able to be a part of a growing movement for care in this country that is demanding what we deserve. We deserve good jobs for care workers. We deserve affordable, quality childcare in this country. And we deserve paid family and medical leave so we can take care of the people that we love. Affordable aging and disability care, especially in the home and community. These are things that we deserve. And together we are building a movement with the power to deliver on those things. And that is what is so meaningful about being here and celebrating this work, because that's what it's all about.
Fantastic. Janae?
Yeah, I'll say that I think it's really our young people who feel unheard. I mean, how many of them have to die by preventable gun death? How many of them have to have their rights taken away concerning the autonomy of their own bodies? And how many of them have to have their right to vote suppressed and have to worry about what world they will inherit because of climate injustice? And they've been making these claims and these demands and standing up with mobilization and exercising their voices, and we have not delivered. We have not responded. Our elected officials have not given them what they deserve to inhabit and inherit a democracy and a country that is suitable for them to thrive in. And so I think it is incumbent upon all of us to think about how we bring young people into the fold. And so the transition and the baton passing that we saw on the stage earlier was so heartwarming, because we saw the recognition that it doesn't end with us, that every generation has a role in this fight. But those generations that are still here have to partner with young people to make sure that we are bringing them forward and that we are creating a world that they can thrive in. And unfortunately, I just don't think we are doing a good enough job of doing that.
Well, you know, I think we've set the table nicely, and now let's drill down into some of the specifics. You know, you're in a room with a lot of type A people with a lot of thoughts on of what the solutions are, and I'm sure you've got your own. Can you tell us more about some of the things that you're pressing on specifically?
Sure. Well, I have to say, I think we are in the middle of a redistricting revolution. For those of you who, you know, are paying attention to the news and how we are changing the way we are able to elect elected officials in this country due to, in part, a case that the Legal Defense Fund won in the last Supreme Court term, Allen versus Milligan, which we are so proud of because we were able to vindicate the rights of Black voters in Alabama. But our fight wasn't just about Alabama. It was about the fact that when district lines are drawn to discriminate against any voter, that taint is carried into the halls of Congress. And that win in Alabama has now caused the state of Georgia, the state of Louisiana, many other states, North Carolina, to rethink whether those lines are actually fair and just. And many of those lines are being redrawn. So that's something that we are very excited about continuing to pursue, not just at the federal level, but the state and local levels. And then, of course, there's the attack on DEI that is a result from the decision in the last Supreme Court term. So we're partnering with the National Women's Law Center and many of our other colleagues to push back against the capitulation that so many are engaged in response to that decision, and to make sure that we finally get the racial gender, ability, and all other equity that was never sufficient even before the Supreme Court did its damage to affirmative action.
I have a personal interest in just seeing what happens in terms of the spillover from academia into the corporate sector for sure. But yes, the attack on DEI is quite real. Ajin?
Well, we're going to be organizing until every job in childcare and in aging and disability care is earns a family-sustaining wage with benefits, real economic security, and a union. There's no reason why in this country every care job shouldn't be a great job, right?
It's that simple.
Yeah.
So we've talked a little bit about the stories that we tell. We've talked about some of the work that you're trying to advance, and I want to take it back into the personal realm. The work that you do is incredibly important, but I also have to imagine it's quite exhausting. So, we all have different things that sustain us. For me, it's thinking a little bit about my mother. My mother was 18 when she had her first child and got married and had 4 children before coming to the United States, getting not only an undergraduate education, but a graduate school education, and having 4 more children. And then ultimately having to rebuild everything after a military coup in our home country in West Africa. And so when I think about what sustains me, it is the memory of everything that she really withstood in order to create this path. And so, that's what keeps me in it. But what keeps you in it?
One of the things that really sustains me is nights like tonight, where we actually take a moment to celebrate, to channel joy, to talk about how much has been accomplished, to surround ourselves with people who inspire us, to really remind each other of our power and our ability to sustain and to win. So tonight sustains me.
Well, I'm very sustained by the sisterhood within the movement for justice. There are a lot of women leaders right now of national nonprofit organizations like Fatima who work together in concert with other women and other leaders in a way that is meant to strategize, is meant to uplift, is meant to reinforce and complement the work that we all do, because this is no time for competition. This is no time for division.
That's right.
This is a moment when we must bring all of our resources and unity to bear to fight a common threat. And I get energized by working in concert with leaders like Fatima and so many others who understand the assignment in this moment.
Yep, that's right.
There's nothing like understanding the assignment. And so I actually thought that we would close our time out today by going back to where, the table that was set for us by the incredible team that pulled this all together. I could not imagine 3 more powerful words: joy, defiance, hope. And so I was hopeful that you would engage in a little wordplay with me. And when you think of the word joy, what comes to mind?
90s hip hop.
All of a sudden, Chub Rock just filled my ears. Yes, absolutely.
Well, of course, I co-sign that as a hip hop baby. When I hear the word joy, I think of revolution.
Revolution. That's powerful. All right, what about defiance?
Domestic workers, our members.
That's exactly right.
I think of resilience and courage.
And hope.
Ooh, Fatima Goff's graves.
Eternal. You have to be eternally hopeful to do this work.
You have to be eternally hopeful to do this work and to dream of a better world and then to go out there and make it. And I thank you both for everything that you do
Thank
to do
you.
exactly
Thank you
that.
so much. Thank you. And congratulations, National Women's Law Center.
Congratulations, Justice Brown Jackson.
The FDA just approved an over-the-counter birth control pill called O-Pill.
We have worked so hard for the past year. I feel like my state just showed up. We are protected tonight.
UPS reaching a tentative agreement with its 340,000 worker-strong Teamsters union.
Hi, Barbie. Hi, Barbie.
Thank you for coming together with joy in our hearts.
Please welcome Emily Martin, Vice President for Education and Workplace Justice at the National Women's Law Center.
At the National Women's Law Center, our pro bono partnerships with the private bar are essential to amplifying our advocacy and scaling our impact. We're proud and grateful to have sustaining relationships that provide mutual benefit, advancing progress in the rule of law on a range of issues that impact the daily lives of women and girls across the country. Over the past 15 years, our organization has grown significantly, and so has the demand for our expertise. Tonight's first honoree has helped us meet the moment. From taking the lead on cutting-edge litigation, to bolstering our research capabilities and guiding our General Counsel's office, Hogan Lovells has proved to be a trusted partner. In the face of a vocal minority's attempts to drive a wedge between the LGBTQ+ rights movement and the larger gender justice movement, Hogan Lovells has helped us strongly reaffirm that trans rights are a matter of gender justice, and that we will always be here to defend those rights. For example, Hogan Lovells attorneys partnered with us as we took the Trump administration to court to defend every patient's right to non-discriminatory health care, including trans patients, pregnant patients, and patients seeking reproductive health care. And earlier this year, the firm led the way on our amicus brief on behalf of a trans girl in West Virginia who wants to try out for her cross-country middle school team. More broadly, they've been a crucial ally in building our national strategy to support trans student athletes under Title IX. Whether working behind the scenes or taking on the biggest issues of the day as we navigate a post-Dobbs world, Hogan Lovells has long been a champion for gender justice. And this year, I'm pleased to present them with the inaugural Pro Bono Impact Award. Here to accept this honor is Jessica Ellsworth, one of the firm's partners, an incredible lawyer, and counted among our organization's dearest friends.
Thank you so much to the National Women's Law Center for this incredible honor as the inaugural Pro Bono Impact Awardee. we feel both grateful and at home as we look around the room today at our fellow gender justice advocates, partners, and thought leaders. It is an honor to be recognized among such great company. Hogan Lovells and the Law Center have partnered together for decades, and the firm has been in lockstep with the Law Center through some of the most intense moments in both the Law Center's and the movement's history. We have worked with the Law Center by sitting on the prestigious Leadership Advisory Committee, by partnering on litigation and research efforts, and by doing much of the behind-the-scenes, invisible work, like boosting organizational capacity and working with the General Counsel's office. Through each of these roles, we have seen the importance of the Law Center's work, and it only inspires us to commit to more moving forward. Receiving this award inspires Hogan Lovells, to be sure, but we hope it further inspires the broader legal community to engage in pro bono partnership. Firms, in-house legal departments, and individuals all benefit from pro bono work. Our attorneys have expanded their skill sets, connected more powerfully with one another, and have been able to participate in significant work outside of their day-to-day work. Our attorneys are so proud to be in partnership with the Law Center and to fulfill a passion for public service. We consistently challenge ourselves to focus our time, skills, and resources to create a world-leading pro bono practice. Our commitment to pro bono continually is a strategic priority for the firm. And we're very proud of the impact we've contributed to alongside the National Women's Law Center. In line with our commitments to diversity, equity, and inclusion within the firm, we recognize that providing meaningful opportunities for our lawyers, like the work we've done with NWLC, is part of what makes Hogan Lovells' commitment to creating lasting, positive impact for everyone at our firm possible. Thank you again for this recognition tonight, but more importantly, thank you for the opportunity to make a difference on such critical issues of our time and to join you in the fight for gender justice.
I want to tell everybody in the Supreme Court to keep their hands off.
Anytime an abortion is needed, that's standard medical care. It's healthcare, fact.
There is so much wrong with our medical system, and there's so many inequities.
Too many lives are at stake. To be silent?
Care can't wait.
I am beyond ready to see accountability. Dan Snyder and the Washington football team need to be held accountable.
So this isn't really a women's rights issue.
We can recognize that this impacts women while also recognizing that it impacts other groups.
Please welcome 2019 WNBA champion with the Washington Mystics and social justice advocate, Natasha Cloud.
Oh, not y'all cheering for me. Not y'all cheering for me. I like the energy. How y'all doing tonight? Oh, I like that. I like that. Okay. That's some good energy. Sports have always been a vehicle for justice. They are a microcosm of both hope and struggle, from epic showdowns to fierce rivalries, to unlikely alliances and underdog heroes. And when the battle for victory on the court meets the fight for safety and dignity off of it, athletes and activists have the power to both capture the country's imagination and confront its painful realities. I'm part of a movement in women's sports to push for the equitable policies that people in every profession deserve. Talk about it. Talk about it. From equal pay to paternal leave and so many other issues that the National Women's Law Center is fighting for too. And I'm a part of a league that's 80% black women. Many of us queer. Yeah, okay, so we love to be happy now, y'all. Come on. Come on. Many of us queer, but for whom activism is deeply, deeply personal. I've even been pulled over by the police on the way to my own basketball games. So I know who the world sees when I walk down the street. So in 2020, when I took a season off from the WNBA to focus on the fight for racial and social justice, it felt less like a choice and more like my calling. That didn't mean I wasn't scared now, y'all, because listen, y'all, I was terrified. All right, I didn't know what was gonna happen. But that's courage, right? Knowing that speaking out could literally cost you everything and doing it anyway. It's the courage of survivors. It's the courage of survivors who turn their pain into power and tell the truth to the world. It's the courage of elected officials who defend our democracy and insist on accountability, even and especially for the people in charge. It's this courage that creates real change. And it's the courage of Congressman Jamie Raskin. Please join me now in welcoming him to the stage. I'm going to give you the podium.
Thank you. Hello, National Women's Law Center. Hello, everybody. I got to come to a beautiful, convivial, social gathering to meet the people who know how to tear down a hostile workplace environment. And so I've come to salute you all. It's good to arrive here from the House of Representatives. I was with the powers that be, but I get to be now at the National Women's Law Center with the powers that ought to be and the powers that are going to be. We have a new speaker in the House of Representatives whose number one issue is a nationwide ban on abortion rights with no exceptions for rape or incest. So you should be very clear that Speaker Johnson is a man with really good manners and really bad politics, okay? And it's getting kind of theocratic in my workplace. I had a colleague not long ago who pointed out that the Texas legislature had just endorsed the 10 Commandments and said it was time for us to endorse the 10 Commandments. I said I thought the 10 Commandments had been doing all right for millennia without an endorsement from the Freedom Caucus and the U.S. House, but they pressed the issue, so I suggested a rule in the Rules Committee that if we're going to vote on the 10 Commandments, then we should have to vote on each commandment separately, okay? You can't get away with that omnibus package, and you can't vote for any commandment you've ever violated, because then you'll be taking the name of the Lord in vain, violating the third commandment. Another colleague got up and made the point that the moral downfall of America was in 1962 in Engel versus Vitale when the Supreme Court, quote, banned prayer in the public schools. And I had to get up and point out, no, the Supreme Court never banned prayer in the public schools. As long as there are pop math quizzes, there will be prayer in the public schools. Anybody can pray whenever he or she wants to pray. It's just the government can't compel you to pray in the way that the government wants you to pray. So I come here as a true blue, dyed-in-the-wool Democrat, but I know that you are a nonpartisan organization, and I don't want to compromise anybody's 501c3 status. So I wanted to just start on a bipartisan note by invoking our last great Republican president, Abraham Lincoln, who spoke of government of the people, by the people, and for the people, which has been the tantalizing dream of America. And we, of course, didn't start that way. We started as a slave republic of white male property owners, but it has been through successive waves of social and political and legal struggle that we've been able to realize something much closer to Lincoln's beautiful ideal. And nobody today is doing more to build gender justice and women's equality in America than the National Women's Law Center. And your extraordinary president and CEO, Fatima Gosgraves, and I want to salute her. Now, it's a long road from law to justice, as everybody knows and as the lawyers can tell you. And it's not a route that anybody should have to travel alone, but this year, a truly remarkable group of former colleagues showed us all what it looks like to go together on the road from law to justice. And as the ranking member of the House Oversight Committee, I heard the powerful testimony that former employees, and we should say survivors, of the Washington football team with the late unmentionable racist name provided against its former owner, coming forward to corroborate one another's accounts of a truly toxic and illegal work environment. And as they pursued their case in Congress and in the courts, I saw not just the courage it took to come forward for the first time, but the dedication that they demonstrated in showing up time and again for each interview and for each other. They drew on their collective strength, because sisterhood is powerful, pressing forward through multiple investigations, pushing for accountability from the NFL, and weathering months of public scrutiny. And with the support of the Law Center's Time's Up Legal Defense Fund and the incredible attorneys at Katz, Banks, Kumin, they prevailed in a victory that reverberated throughout the Capitol, throughout football, and throughout the country. And I remember when Dan Snyder's lawyers told us on the Oversight Committee that these lawyers in their case must have been funded by George Soros because they were so well organized. And it turned out they were not funded by George Soros, but they had an even more powerful social force behind them. They had the National Women's Law Center behind them. So together, they secured not just new leadership for the team, but a new landmark win in the fight for everybody at work to have the safety and dignity and respect that they deserve. All of America is grateful for the women who fought for their rights at the Washington football team. And we are all grateful for their bravery and their determination. And I am honored to be invited to present them tonight with the Trailblazer Award. And I should say, not only did they give a new lease on life to Title VII and workplace harassment law, they gave a new lease on life to the Washington football team on the football field, too, because they're not bad anymore the way they were under the sexist, toxic workplace that they were operating before. The women we honor tonight have shown that real teamwork is based on equality and drawing out the best from every player on the team. Representing the group are Emily Applegate and the group's extraordinary attorneys, Lisa Banks and Deborah Katz. Who have represented survivors like Dr. Christine Blasey Ford. They've represented whistleblowers in the transportation, nuclear, and pharmaceutical industries. And for the past quarter century, they've been absolutely dogged in their determination to protect women from sexual harassment and abuse in the workplace. These are lawyers that American women can be proud of and that American abusers should be scared of all across the country. And these are survivors that all of us owe a profound debt of gratitude to. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome and honor Lisa Banks and Deborah Katz and their clients.
Thank you, Congressman Raskin, and thank you to the National Women's Law Center for this honor. We could not be prouder of our clients and what they have accomplished. It was over 3 years ago, in the summer of 2020, when I first had the privilege to talk with Emily Applegate, who had bravely attached her name and face to the explosive Washington Post story about the decades of harassment and abuse at the Washington football team. That conversation with Emily led to countless phone calls with others, and soon Debbie Katz and I were representing over 40 former employees of the team, all of whom had endured or observed harassment and wanted to demand accountability from the team and the NFL. These former employees, from interns to cheerleaders to executives, did not come forward for money or for notoriety. They came forward to fight for transparency and accountability, to fight for women and survivors. Over the course of 3 years, that fight included participation in multiple investigations by the NFL, by Congress, and by state and federal prosecutors. As our clients participated in investigation after investigation, they endured public scrutiny and a relentless smear campaign that impacted them both personally and professionally. But they never gave up, and they never stopped fighting. The sale of the Washington football team was a huge victory for our clients. And for the employees and fans of the team, and for the entire DC region. It was a victory for survivors everywhere. Our long fight was aided by many partners and friends, the amazing journalists at the Washington Post, including Liz Clark, who's here with us today, dedicated members of Congress and their staff, including Congressman Raskin, and of course, the National Women's Law Center and the Time's Up Legal Defense Fund, who gave us the ability to keep on fighting. We would not be here today without these critical partners and friends. So we're very privileged today to have several of our clients with us, and so we want to welcome onto the stage several of our clients that we can introduce you to tonight and ask you to give them a big round of applause. I want to welcome Emily Applegate, Rachel Engelson, Megan Imbert, Anna Nunez, Barbara Beach, Dominique Dupras, Angela Granger, Brittany Peretti, Eileen Vega, Brad Baker, and Jason Friedman.
Good evening. I don't know where to look. I'm sorry. I'd like to first thank the National Women's Law Center for hosting us tonight and for recognizing the success that the people on this stage have accomplished in our fight for equality for women in the workplace. I'm honored to be here tonight, and I stand beside my former colleagues, fellow advocates, and friends, knowing that each of our individual bravery, resilience, and determination has aided in creating a safer workplace for women. The late musical artist, Nipsey Hussle, said, "The highest human act is to inspire." I stand here tonight in a room full of inspirational people, and if my story helped inspire anybody, then speaking out my purpose for speaking out was accomplished. It's not often that a group of women and some amazing men can remove a billionaire from power. But when your attorneys are Lisa Banks and Deborah Katz, the possibilities are endless. I will never forget the day Lisa Banks reached out to me and told me I was going to need an attorney moving forward. One, thankfully, because, you don't need that. But in my wildest dreams, I never imagined that 3 years after the first Washington Post story was published, that we were celebrating in FedEx Field and celebrating new ownership of the Washington Commanders. Whatever their name is. I'm so grateful for everyone who has fought this fight, published our stories, and recognized the hard work that went into this battle. I am joyful, and I have hope that if we continue to defy expectations, we will continue to make the workplace safer and more inclusive and provide more opportunities for women in the workplace. So thank you so much. Have a great evening.
So we're still fighting for our right to abortion care laws in this country. But we have some good news that brings us much needed hope in the struggle.
You might be wondering what the National Women's Law Center is doing at an NFL game. Y es importante para nosotros poder ayudar a estas familias, que los niños continúen con nosotros para seguirles dando una educación temprana.
This is a beacon of hope and possibilities. This is proof that dreams do come true.
Do you solemnly swear that you will support and defend the Constitution of the United States?
Congratulations.
Thank you to the youth-led movements that made moments like this possible.
When we fight, we win. When we fight, we win.
Please welcome Melissa Botaic, Vice President for Income Security and Child Care Early Learning at the National Women's Law Center.
Congresswoman Catherine Clark remembers vividly the day she tallied the cost of childcare for her 3 kids and realized the total would take up her entire salary. She knows the pain that so many parents across the country feel of stretching their schedules and their budget, sometimes to the breaking point, in order to get the care that their families need. And she understands the stakes. Too often the math just doesn't add up, forcing parents, many of them women, out of the workforce at the cost of both their career and their household income. Lucky for all of us, Catherine Clark was able to stay on the job. And today, as the House Democratic Whip, she uses her leadership in Congress to champion affordable childcare as an essential part of America's economic infrastructure. For a decade, she has been a leading voice in Washington, D.C. in the fight to lower childcare costs for American families, invest in early education, and pay childcare providers what they deserve. Her efforts have secured millions of dollars in critical assistance for parents, for kids, and care workers across the country. And she's not done yet. Whip Clark continues to be one of the Law Center's greatest partners and allies in the fight to fully invest in the care economy. We are grateful to be doing this work alongside her, and we are thrilled to recognize her leadership tonight with our Trailblazer Award. Representative Clark was unfortunately not able to join us tonight, but would like to take a few minutes virtually to thank and connect with you all.
Good evening. Thank you to the National Women's Law Center for this incredible honor. Every day, through your devotion and talent, you breathe new life into a righteous cause, building a country worthy of our daughters. You turn simmering frustration into burgeoning action. You channel women's collective rage into collective power, and you turn that power into real, tangible change. New laws on the books, better rulings from the bench. Also, a young girl might grow up to know fewer injustices than her mother. That work is as urgent now as it was at your founding. Over the last 50 years, pay gaps have narrowed, but they haven't closed. We have far more seats at the leadership table, but nowhere near the 50% we deserve. At every turn, our reproductive freedom is under renewed assault. And the path to prosperity is still blocked by the impossibly high cost of childcare. I'm especially grateful to your partnership in tearing down that barrier, because it's what got me into politics in the first place. I ran for office to help secure affordable, accessible childcare for every family. To me, childcare is about one thing: economic justice for women. On that front, and in all fights ahead of us, the battle lines have been drawn. I stand ready. The women of the House Democratic Caucus stand ready. And together, we will build the future that the women of America deserve. Thank you for being a powerful voice and for your solidarity with one another. You're the reason justice will prevail over the forces of misogyny and oppression. So we'll keep the work up, and thank you again for this honor.
What an evening. So though our program is coming to a close, I have to say, before I close us out officially, I would be remiss if I did not mention these beautifully designed cue cards on your table. Because although we need hope and defiance in this time, we also need resources. So I hope you will join us in supporting the National Women's Law Center as you do all year round and tonight. And I hope you will stay and enjoy each other's company and the sounds of the incredible DJ Blackberry. She's gonna spin for us tonight. So thank you for joining us. Thank you for your support. I'll see you all next year.
Like some kind of consciousness.